All along, they were watching us, an unbroken line of witnesses to Britain's history. Their testimony predates not just the Saxons and the Romans, the Celts and the Beaker culture. It goes back to before Britain was even an island, to when the land was open, untilled, and bearing the fresh scars from an apocalyptic ice age. These witnesses are the oak trees of Britain. I will try to share some of their unique insights on British history, and along the way I will draw upon the imagination of an AI image generator to see its unique interpretation of Britain's epic early history. From lightning oaks to longboats and Mesolithic farming to the Magna Carta, the mighty oak tree has seen it all. But our story begins in 12,000 BCE. That's over 14,000 years ago. The ice is still retreating in the far north. Britain still is connected to mainland Europe and will be for another 6,000 years. You could just walk across. Doggerland, a vast landmass off the east coast of Britain, has still not yet sunk beneath the waves. Many scholars believe that this land is barren of oak, and that it would be another several thousand years before oak forests crawled their way north from Europe at the pace of acorns in the wind. But oak pollen has been detected this far back in time, in the Shetlands and in a still connected island in the deepest loch beds of Inisir. Is this evidence that oaks have been in Britain for thousands of years more than commonly thought, surviving in the west in sheltered glens and sea lochs, or was the pollen simply blown from elsewhere? For our earliest oaks, Britain would be a strange but wonderful place. Their encounters with the local humans, who had olive brown skin, dark hair, and brown eyes, would have been few and far between. These men and women were hunter-gatherers, and the oaks would watch curiously as they chased deer and boar beneath their giant, outstretched canopies. Millennia would pass, bringing not much change for our oaks. Then a tsunami struck. In 6100 BCE, during the Mesolithic period, or Middle Stone Age, Britain would become permanently separated from mainland Europe. It is believed that landslides in Norway, known as the Storegga Slides, triggered one of the most violent tsunamis ever recorded on Earth, as a landlocked sea in the Norwegian Trench burst out of its banks. The watery barrier that now separated the island from Europe would of course shape Britain's history for millennia to come. The Stone Age survivors in Britain were not forever alone, however. Neolithic farming techniques would make their way across from Europe sometime before 4000 BCE. Wheat and barley is first sown in Britain during this period, and domesticated sheep and cattle begin to roam the green and pleasant land. The first henges are built around 1,000 years after this, in 3000 BCE. Most notably, of course, Stonehenge. These would be adapted in both appearance and function many times over the following centuries. The tools the humans used would change too, with copper instruments found in 2700 BCE giving way to the stronger bronze by 2200 BCE. It was around this time that another major change in the complexion of Britain occurred. For our oaks, times were changing too. The humans had discovered metals, which meant the wood of the trees was utilised ever more easily. But still, the forests flourished. Interestingly, the humans that roamed these forests had changed in appearance, disappearing quickly were the olive-skinned humans, replaced by those with lighter skin, blue eyes, and blonde hair. The Beaker culture had arrived. Over a few hundred years, beginning in 2400 BCE, the original Neolithic population would almost completely disappear from the DNA record. Named due to the items they crafted, these Beaker people likely brought the Bronze Age to Britain. Who knows what this takeover was like for the original Neolithic population? Take the 55 oak posts of Seahenge surrounding a gnarled oak stump in Norfolk. It is thought to have been a freestanding timber circle, possibly a memorial to mark the death of someone buried elsewhere. The oaks of Seahenge were cut in the spring of 2049 BCE, and so, did this cenotaph represent a last gasp expression of the Neolithic peoples, or was it made by the Beaker culture, imitating some of the forms of the people that they had replaced? The DNA of Britain would not change as dramatically again, and when the Celtic culture arrived sometime in or just before the first millennium BC, it was a slow shift in habits, customs, art and tools, rather than an epochal replacement as before. The word deru is a truly ancient Proto-Indo-European root word for tree, particularly an oak. The word wid meant to know. As Proto-Indo-European fathered language families, as diverse as Sanskrit, Persian, Norse, and Celtic, it is perhaps no surprise that the word therefore Derowid, or Druid, came to refer in Britain to those who knew the oak trees. Pliny, a Roman historian, later states that the Druids performed all their religious rites in oak groves. Such groves could be found in oak forests across northern Europe, and so this Deru root word turns up in place names too, such as Derry or Londonderry. The oaks could sense the reverence that they were given, and the growing interdependence between man and tree. Oak timbers were now used for building, oak sticks for fuel, and oak acorns for food and fodder. The oak's use in industry only accelerated with the arrival of the next set of foreign peoples. The Romans first invaded Britain in 55 BCE under Julius Caesar, but it is only in 43 CE that they truly made Britain home. They would remain in this land, though never fully conquering it, until 410 CE. Tracing the distant origin of oaks found beneath the city of Rome attests to the trading networks that the Roman Empire had stretching across Europe. An oak tree felled in Britain may well have had its timbers transported by river through Gaul and used to make a portico in Pompeii. The industrious Romans and their new religion of Christianity did more or less stamp out the Druidic rituals, but Britain still revered the oak. In Cornwall, a nail driven into an oak cured toothache, while in Wales, rubbing the oak with the palm of your left hand on Midsummer's Day kept you healthy all year. And things which grew on oak, such as mistletoe, were also duly esteemed. Indeed, Christian practice incorporated many aspects of these sentiments into its festivals. Think Christmas. Many English towns today have areas called Gospel Oak, harking back to a time when an oak marked a parish boundary. Every spring, parishioners would circle the boundaries in a ceremony known as beating the bounds and assemble to hear the gospel read beneath the oak tree. When the Angles, Saxons, Jutes and Frisians invaded Britain across the 4th, 5th and 6th centuries CE, the area they conquered slowly became known as England, from Angleland. Thor, known to these Germanic peoples as Thunor, looked favourably upon oaks and would strike them with lightning more often than other trees. Perhaps this was due to their size, with oak trunks alone reaching up to 40 metres in height. The oaks that survived these lightning strikes were known as lightning oaks, and locals often took pieces of these trees to put on their houses for good luck. The oak was also sacred for a new breed of raiders. For these invaders, oak was not just special because of its link with Thor and thunder, but because of its use in everything from longboats to spoons, spatulas, spades and shovels. The Vikings first start raiding and invading the islands of Britain sometime before 789 CE. Due to population mingling, to put it one way, and the fact that they were the Northmen ancestors of the Normans, you could say the Vikings never left. As Britain entered the next millennium, the oak forests could sense their gradual retreat from the centre of spiritual life in Britain. They took on a more functional role, still vital though to the lifeblood of the people. Over the centuries, kings and queens would hide under oak boughs at crucial points in British history. Some of these trees still stretch out their aged branches. Oak forests supplied the timbers of the Royal Navy, which both guaranteed this land's freedom and threatened that of others. Few of those who are watching will know how important oak ink has been. Wasps inject oaks with chemicals that hijack the normal growth processes in parts of the tree. Strangely shaped growths called galls occur, which are in fact nurseries for the wasp's larvae. The galls can be crushed, mixed with iron sulfate, gum arabic and water to create an indelible ink. Some of the most important texts in Western history, the Magna Carta, the American Declaration of Independence, Newton's scientific theories, Da Vinci's drawings, Mozart's music, were written in this oak-derived ink. And how about today? Oak is Great Britain's second most common broad-leaved tree, covering 16% of forested land. Hundreds of species rely on the oak for safety and succor. Of course, the oak's very breaths, bringing carbon in and sighing oxygen out, help in humanity's latest battle with the elements. So, what thinks the modern oak, this hardy descendant of those intrepid Ice Age acorns? Well, it simply watches on, waiting and witnessing.